of a sticky wicket, this, isn't it? Because what happens if all of a sudden local councils can come out and they know they can get something in the High Court that says this particular hotel, permanent injunction, no use for migrant hotels? What do we end up with? Do we end up with tent cities in local parks? What's the human rights of that?
I mean, I think, as we know, the asylum system is broken, and it needs fixing in every single element. And it's not just one element that needs fixing. You know, it's good to see that Ben Wallace is talking about France, but will anything happen from that? And you know, if the councils are successful, I don't think they will be, but if they are, that does set a precedent, which of course the councils are going to use. I mean, even down here in Cornwall, you know, the news of when refugees have gone to a hotel in Cornwall, very, very kind of anti that the local news. So you're going to have lots and lots of those problems. But like you said, where do you put them? Now, from a legal perspective, we have a duty under current legislation, which may or may not be reformed with whichever Home Secretary may be in next week or the week after. We have current duties to house asylum seekers. So if we can't put them in hotels in any particular county or elsewhere, we can't put them in, as you said, tent cities, then we need to have another option. And one thing that I think, and I've seen other people comment on, is if we look back to the COVID crisis back in 2019, when we built all of those Nightingale hospitals rather quickly at great expense and never really used them. Yeah, it's something that we could perhaps consider in terms of locating large numbers of migrants while their asylum seeker process is going through. And we can actually make things quicker, perhaps, if we do that. But that's just one idea. But I think it's, like I said, it's just the whole system is broken and needs urgent reform.
I know, I agree completely. And the Nightingale Hospital angle on this is something that gets raised a lot with my viewers and listeners, which is, well, I suppose we could do that. I mean, the reality is a lot of people don't necessarily want that done at all, but maybe it's better than the hotel in your local village being used, because it's the knock-on effect of, was that hotel used for weddings, for example? Did it used to have a restaurant and a bar in it, the local economy? All of this stuff, that's before you get stuck into safety. Just explain to everyone watching this now, how could, if we wanted to, the law be reformed so that we essentially wouldn't have a duty to look after these people? Is that right?
Well, the reason why we're having all these legal challenges, the reason why the laws are there in the first place, ultimately come from the Human Rights Act, which comes ultimately from the EU. That, as we know, is subject to being replaced by the Bill of Rights. It hasn't happened yet, so we don't know how that's going to result. But it's that legislation that all these challenges are ultimately coming from, the Human Rights Act. So to change what's happening now, you would need to change the law. And as we know, that's under process, but we don't yet know the detail of the new so-called Bill of Rights law, particularly, obviously, with the ever-changing Home Secretaries.
And just very lastly, I'm not sure if this is in your brief, but I'm keen to get to the bottom of this, because people talk to me about this all the time. They say, what about my human rights? They say this thing of, well, do I not have the human right to not feel potentially a bit threatened when I walk down the street? Do I not have the human right for the government to not necessarily create what could be perceived as quite a large security risk in my town or village? We don't know who all of these people are. That's fair enough. Quite a lot of these locations, I've been to two, for example, where there's been a nursery school that's backed on at the end of it. That is an added risk in your area. Do the people of that area not have a human right to not be exposed to that risk?
I think it's something you always see in human rights legislation and law around the world. There are always competing interests. Whose is stronger? You know, which human right, effectively, from one of the better phrases, is stronger than the other one. Now, if people can show that by asylum seekers being placed in their local community, that one of their human rights, which they're also entitled to, has been breached, then of course they can go through a similar process. But then it will just be, as you can imagine, just lawyers and legislation everywhere.